Hello. So it's been a while since I've been on YouTube, and I know that there's probably many wondering what exactly happened. Am I still around? And I am. So basically, to sum things up, is that um, as many of you might remember, I was living in Russia. I was in Russia a total of about 3 years, and during that time frame, there was a lot that, excuse me, there was a lot that occurred. Um, there were, of course, many unexpected things that happened. And when I arrived to the country, my plan initially was just to visit. I was there for just, as I said, a short visit. Arrived in Russia in March of 2020. So keep in mind, this is right as the COVID pandemic was just kicking off, and there was a lot of uncertainty in the world. By that point, I had already spent some time in Estonia. I was working on a business there, and um, initially there was some great success. Some of you that that might know me quite well might know the whole story, but um, initially there was some great success, and the whole thing kind of fell apart. So what I did is I went over to Russia. I was getting kind of bored of being in Estonia, and I wanted to see how things were there. I had gone over on a visit, and so I decided to make my way over there. So I was there for several years total, and during that time, I did some different things. One of the things is that I completed a master's degree about technology, and I of course met a lot of people. And again, many of you know about my less than desirable dating experiences that played out. So there was a lot that happened during the time that I was there. Now, during the last about 6 months or a year, yeah, it would be about during the last year, major thing happened. The war kicked off between Russia and Ukraine. So I think it was around February 24th, Russia invades Ukraine, and that whole thing goes like obviously something totally unexpected. I guess we might say black swan. I'm still there. And at that time, I don't have the proper documentation to be there. And I, at the time, was under the assumption that, oh, no problem. I can just say, um, get the exit, like just exit like I normally would, no issues like most countries. Not the case. Much more complicated in Russia. So in Russia, they do not want you to leave if you are there illegally. They will incarcerate you. Most countries, they want you to leave. In fact, they will pay you sometimes. Western countries will actually pay people to leave, not Russia. So I was there. I was illegal. Like at that point, I was illegal, and the time frame of when my status went from being legal to illegal had actually started, if you can believe this, way back in 2020. So September 2020, my stay was at that point already considered illegal. Now it could have been fixed. There was still a time period. I don't know exactly, but I think it was basically from then until like sometime in 2021. There was still a time where I could have probably fixed that, but I didn't. And so I'm there illegally, and we're getting into 20 later into 2022. So full time, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I'm still there. Um, my Western debit cards were expiring. I only had one way left of being able to get money through from the West, for, and so at that point in time, I was like, I got to make some decisive actions here because otherwise, I literally will be totally screwed. I won't have any documentation. I had a temporary passport, which was about to expire. And actually, hold on here. If you can, I will show you the temporary one. Just one moment. Okay. All right. So, sorry. um, all right. So this is, I'll show you. This is a temporary passport. So you can see it's kind of like, kind of flimsy, like that. All right. And This is like the actual permanent passport. So this is permanent. You can see it's quite thick, a lot of pages. Okay, so I was on, I was still using this temporary passport, which had an expiration that was, I can tell you, it was for March 13th, 2023. So I was in a world of hurt at that point because passport was going to expire. I could not be issued a permanent passport in Russia. U.S. consular embassy stopped issuing them there. I was losing access to sources of bringing money. Why couldn't I just get a job in Russia? Well, good luck without having any actual documentation being there. Yeah, it might be possible, but very difficult. And in that realm of things, it's like then you're just you're really playing around with your life at that point. So I needed to figure out what to do. I realized that I don't know what my future is going to look like, so at least I want to visit a couple other places. If I can't stay here, I'm not staying in St. Petersburg. So I went to the south of Russia. I went to um, Krasnodar. I went to also Moscow. I guess that would be like the Golden Triangle region. I wanted to go to Siberia, but by that point, I had no visa. Trying to travel was very difficult. And if I was to refuse to entry onto an airplane or something, and I was all the way in Siberia, I mean, Russia is a massive country, even much larger than the US. So it would have been seriously complicated for trying to like get back out of Russia. So what happened is that January comes around and I start looking into, okay, what do I need to do? How can I get can I leave here? And I realized, no, I can't. I need to get an exit visa. So I looked into that process. I go to the authorities so I can try to start that. And essentially, I get put through kind of a runaround about like, oh, you got this, whatever. And again, I can show you the actual document that I was given. Not really an official document, but this uh, this is what was given to me. So the person basically just wrote, it's written in Russian. So basically, she gave me this not really document, but wrote down what I needed to do, supposedly in order to get my exit visa, leave Russia. Well, uh, of course, like everything there, it did not happen according to plan. um, so it's kind of funny because like this is one of my criticisms of Russia, maybe of the whole entire Eastern Slavic sphere, is that there's this artificial what's the word, bravado, like, oh, you have to act like, oh, everything's according to plan, blah blah blah. Even like say in a dating environment, it's really almost fake. It's kind of, I don't know, I see it as a little bit juvenile. I think people should be, of course, confident, but also like honest and try to have dialogue, be transparent about things. Because if you're just lying to people like that, acting like a scumbag con artist, I mean, we saw what happened with Donald Trump, and we're seeing how that backfired on him. I mean, it looks like he's probably going to prison. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you should at least like be like honest and good to people. Like people respect you, people want to help you. I mean, be good to them. So, anyhow, the Russians said, okay, just put this documentation together. You'll be fine. And so that's what I did. I got the documentation that was requested of me. For example, there was some photos, some money, 1,000 rubles, my initial visa, like the initial visa to get to Russia, because you could not get into the country, at least legally, without any visa. So I did all of that. I got the documentation together and went back, spoke with the individual, name was Katya, and I said, look, here you go. Here's the here's what you need in a story. Well, I didn't tell her to give me the visa, but I said, so now we should be good. And she said, no, now you have to get a court order. I'm like, what? You didn't tell me that before. So basically, during this whole process, she had changed. I don't know why she changed her mind on it, but then she was telling me that I actually had to go to the court system or go through the court system so that I could just leave the damn country, honestly. And pardon my English, but I was like, this is unbelievable. I mean, what kind of country does that? Most people, like most countries, want to let people leave, especially if they're illegal. Like I had said at the beginning, many Western countries will actually pay people to leave. Our countries are putting people up in hotels. Now, I, of course, totally don't agree with that, but I'm just saying that if someone wants to leave a country, let them leave the country. It's like, is it really that complicated? Especially since I was not a Russian national. And as proof, not that I really care. I mean, as we know, U.S. doesn't really have a very good trajectory, but I have a U.S. passport. I'm not a Russian citizen. Didn't even have residency at the time, so there's no reason that they should have been holding me. I didn't break any criminal laws or anything. So, um, with that being said, she said, "Go get the court order." So then I go and try to do that. And at that point, what happens is that I go to basically another field office within the same. I can't think of the word. There's some acronym. It's basically like their Ministry of Foreign Affairs or whatever. So I go to this other office and I get like sat down with essentially their kind of, I don't know, like you could say immigration police, and I talked with them, and we basically had this long like interview. I thought everything was going to be okay, and then finally they said, "Oh, okay, well, we need to go somewhere else now." And I go to that place, and that's more like an actual like what do you call it, like a jail court, something like that. And so I'm like, okay, this is weird. And I get there and I'm like, okay, so we have to make another like presentation or what, what's going on here. But then I'm told that, oh, can we hold you? Like, and I'm like, no, I have things to do. I can't be held, of course not. And they're like, oh, well, you have no choice. We're taking you into custody, like putting you under arrest. I'm like, what? And so essentially I go within a matter of hours, I go from being a free man or somewhat free man to being in jail, put under arrest, and incarcerated. Totally unexpected. So I spend the first night in jail in a Russian jail. So just terrible. Like that part of the equation. I mean, there wasn't like any like, it's not like there were like what you see in the American prison system where you got like, I don't know, like booty bandits, people running around with shanks or anything like that. Fortunately, it wasn't in that way, but it was just this really small cell. There were these things set up around, like it almost like not like benches, but it was like up, like elevated, like it was just concrete, and then you just had this like small open area, and you could put these like rough, like just like stereotypical rough prison mats down. And so um, I was put into one of these cells. Couldn't have like any electronics, like cell phone, computer, nothing. I mean, just like bare bones. So I'm in there, um, and I'm basically having to sit and wait. And of course, me not knowing what was going to be happening, I drank like a bunch of coffee and stuff that morning. So most of us that know, if you drink coffee or alcohol, you know what happens. And it's like, well, guess what? There's like no toilet in there. It just, terrible. So I was, I was waiting. And I was just slowly time passing by. And I, of course, in the meantime, I had other engagements, commitments that were just like, no one knew what was going on. And I was waiting, and finally there were like later on there were some other people that began showing up that were also being incarcerated, not just for like immigration reasons, but like just like straight up like criminal or whatever. There's even a guy that was pulled over. A cop wanted a bribe from him, and he refused to give a bribe, and so he got thrown in there for a few hours. Like I think he was like the last guy. It was like at 4 in the morning. So finally the next day comes around. So next day comes around. And so then they tell me, okay, we have to go to the court. Um, and before that, we're going to take you around, like, or like we first went to more of like a criminal court for people that had criminal cases. So I was put into like a police van, and I went with those people. And so like we went to like their venue first, and there were other people in the police van, mostly like they were Russian, or like say Russian Kazakh, or people like this. So I'm with them, and we go to the first place. They go to their courts. Most of them just like, were let go, and then it was just me left with two other people that were actually being, or no, actually it was three. One guy was some random like Russian drunk guy, like homeless. I'm not sure why he was with us, but for some reason, I think he just got like picked up or something. And so there was that guy, and then there were two women. And one of the women I know was from Kazakhstan, but of Russian origin. There's a decent amount of people from Kazakhstan that are of Russian origin, and so they like they will go to Russia, work. They speak the same language, same culture. It's very similar. Um, so I'm with them and like talking, and so we're about to go to the court, get to the court, and again it's just more waiting and waiting, and by this time it's getting later into the afternoon, and finally I get taken into the court, sat down, present my case. And I mean, I thought, oh great, like I've studied there, I've done research, I've contributed to the scientific community in Russia, I should be fine. Like they'll probably just tell me that, okay, just leave the country within say 5 days, and then just renew your documentation. No, of course that wasn't what they did. um, they made it so that I was yes, they allowed the me to leave, sort of, but how they did it is that instead I was formally deported. And so um, also is that that individual that I first dealt with, I showed on this little sheet of paper, name was Katya. And sorry to tell you if you're, I doubt this person will ever watch this video, but it's like this bitch lied to me. And what ended up happening is that she actually told them, one of the things that she said is that I was unemployed, I wasn't making any money. It's like, how could I live here? Like, how could I be in Russia if I wasn't making any money? Like, duh. I mean, like, not to sound arrogant about this, but it's like, how would I be surviving? Like, seriously. So that was one of the things that she had told them. And I think that was also one of the reasons why, instead of just letting me voluntarily leave the country, they took me into custody. Even though at the time I had a job. By Russian standards, at the time I was actually making like a pretty good income, and they still took me into custody. And I was at that point, there was like a short transition period, so I was put into the custody. And for a little bit there, I was held in this like just kind of a small room, and I was talking with some of the people. They were like working for facility, like guards or whatever, and spoke with some people. And typical fashion, like this is the thing that like anyone that's been to Russia will realize, this is that I think when you're a foreign person, like especially a Western foreigner, I say it's like this. It's kind of from 0 to 1 back to zero very quick. So you see this with like dating, with many aspects where it can seem very easy. Like say you want to get your Svetlana or Paulina or something, like very, like it can seem much easier than say if you're in the US, but then things will just drop off very quick. I kind of have talked about that in the past with my videos, and I will list those the videos they were unlisted. I'll put those back up. But I've talked about this with dating. So dating market, it will go for like say 3 4 months with a girl, and then just like in the relationship, she'll end it. So kind of same thing. So people like, they're very nice, inquisitive, etc. But I mean, in Russia, that really doesn't mean much, honestly. So I was held there for a while, and then I was taken to another holding facility in a small town in that region, but it was much further out of the city. So they took me in a van. Well, before that, they took me to this, like, I don't know, it was some kind of temporary refugee holding place for people that were coming from the Donbass region. And I thought, wow, this is nice. This is where they're going to hold me. It's almost like a hotel. Cool. Wow. Now, of course, it wasn't that. They weren't going to hold me there. They weren't that nice. So, but we had to stop there briefly to pick up, like, basically, they transferred me from the custody of these people to that guy who then took me to where they held me. So end up at this, like, basically detention center. I mean, barbed wire, bars, etc. I'll put up pictures on my YouTube, like on the what, the community or something. I'll show like a couple pictures with some people, but essentially they put me into like what would be like a detention center in America. And at that point, I got acquainted, and most of the people that were there were either from Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Tajikistan, etc. Mostly former Soviet republics. And there was one, like, an American guy who was like a Latino American, Chicano American. So like, he was actually a really cool guy. I mean, we got along pretty well, and he helped me out a lot. Like, he was really good. I'm not going to throw his name out there just because he wouldn't want that. Like, he still lives over there, and he ended up getting asylum. So in any case, so it's that I was living there, always good, and it was, or not always good, but always good given the circumstances, right? So going to jail or prison is just like, it's just boring. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, just watch TV, sit around? During this time period, I was still doing some work as well. Internet was really bad. Technically, you couldn't have any any like devices, cellular, whatever, but they allowed, people, basically looked all the way. People could still have like their cell phones. Computers, they said no initially, not, but after some time, they actually let me take my computer as well, or computer. So then I had access to my computer, which was quite good for a couple of reasons. But I was held there in total of about like 3 weeks. So during that time, I mean, they provided basic food. You had like just basic bunk bed, put into a room. Generally, people divided by ethnicity, nationality. But like trying to get out of there was actually a bit difficult. So they would just like hold people for different lengths of time. You could be held there for, like, say, a few weeks, or you could be held there for months, or even there's been cases of people being held there for like years. So in my case, I was really pushing to get out of there as soon as I could. And I'm talking to as many people as I can, making my case. I don't know why, just giving me a hard time. And finally, I managed to have some inroads. And at first, I thought I was going to be flown out to Armenia, and because there's no direct flights to the U.S., and also I don't really see any reason going back to the States. But then they said, no, it can't be Armenia. It has to either be Turkey or Uzbekistan, because it has to be a country that has flights that go directly from the U.S., be directly from Russia to there, and then directly to the U.S. I'm like, what? Oh, come on. So I basically had to buy a ticket that went to Turkey and then another one to the U.S., even though I didn't actually use the U.S. ticket. And that happened at around, like, I think it was like 12 a.m. on, I gotta check my passport. It was 12 a.m. at, let's see, it would have been the 21st. Or wait, yeah, on the 21st, like, so it was like that, like almost like the 20th, but going into the 21st of February, actually, they said, okay, it's ready, like, you're ready to go, get your stuff. And so at that point, they took me, of course, in like custody, and I was bundled into a small car with another guy who's from Armenia, and there were 2 guards, and then there was the driver. And so we went through to this small city called Mineral Water in the Caucasus region of Russia. There's an airport there, and I mean, of course, the riders are like cramped, and took this guy to his plane. He had an early departure. I think it was around like 6 a.m. Super close from there to Armenia, less than an hour flight time. And then it was just me. And but I had to wait out the day. I had to be held in custody with these guys. I thought they were just going to like drop me off at the airport. Of course not. So the last thing though that did kind of unnerve me, I was pretty mad about, was that when I was going through the customs, like they're still with me, and I had like luggage and things that like my recording equipment actually that I lost. They were rushing the heck out of me, like, oh, we were like, just like basically they just wanted me out of there, and they wanted to go back home or whatever. And so they were just like rushing me. I had my suitcase, and so what ended up happening is that my suitcase, I don't know if I accidentally had left it in Turkey when I got to Istanbul. Like I could have actually picked it up. That's what I was told, but I didn't realize that because the luggage I actually had to pick up there. I thought it was sent all the way to the U.S. Apparently not. So that was my thought. By that point, I was super tired, and I'd been up like the all night, going all day. And the days prior, I hadn't slept too well, hadn't slept too well. So finally, they rushed me, try to rush me through as quick as possible. And during that process, I put things in like like a bag where I should put one thing, like that was more important. I didn't, and then vice versa. So I ended up arriving to Istanbul, basically losing like almost like all my clothes, camera, everything. I just got there with like basically this. Um, and this. So that's what I arrived with, lost my suitcase. So got there, and then from there I was like, you know what? No reason to go back to the U.S. There's nothing there for me. Like, what is there in the U.S.? I mean, I couldn't get work. I left years ago. I'm like, I'm not going back to the U.S. Screw that. And so at that point, I looked at like what were my other options. As you might recall, this passport was almost expired, so I could not just go into Turkey. They wouldn't issue me a visa because I didn't have like the like actual newer passport I have now. So permanent passport. So I then was like, okay, what's the closest country? I was so exhausted at this point, and it ended up that I had bronchitis even, and that was one of the reasons I was feeling kind of miserable. But they said, well, Georgia will definitely take you. They're like very like pro-American, which I mean, of course, I'm not exactly a huge fan of, just because often I think nowadays being pro-American, pro-Western isn't exactly the best thing, but whatever. So I was like, all right, cool, go there. It's close to Turkey, like right next to Turkey, literally. So ended up getting on like buying a super expensive flight through Turkish Airways, and it was pretty short flight, around like 2 hours, and then finally ended up in Georgia, Tbilisi. Fortunately, they like let me through, didn't really ask too much. And yeah, basically that was the end of my incarceration, custody in Russia, and I've been in Georgia ever since. So it was definitely surprising. It was definitely a surprising experience. I was not expecting it. And I would say this is that in general, it's probably just best to follow, like, if like do research, see what the laws are for if you're living in a country, make sure that you're up to date. Also, what the other thing that happened, which was a huge disappointment, was that I was also like, I'm not like anti-Russian or anti-Belarusian or anything at this point. Like I still like, I mean, I think it's great having like strong European countries, but of course, I mean, I am a little bit personally unnerved about some of the stuff that occurred. But in any case, is that I'll show you. I was supposed to go to Belarus, so I thought, oh, okay, I can just go to Belarus. It's pretty like similar to Russia. It's not like part of the global homo collective West, right? Try to find this. Oh, here we go. Well, I went to do the paperwork, and in Belarus, it's even harder to get like to get the documentation. It's for those of you if you're not from Russia. I would still recommend like going the like Russian option. It's much easier, especially if you just want to check out the country initially. You can get a 3-year multi-entry visa. You can stay for up to 6 months, leave, come back, and it automatically renews. It's literally one of the best options of all of Europe. You wouldn't know it, of course, because mainstream media is more worried about talking about like all this nonsense going on. But this is actually the Belarus stamp. So as you can see here, well, probably don't know what this means, but in Belarusian, this is actually a rejection. So I went to do the documentation because I was going to go to Belarus, and I got the invite. I did the whole process. I'm like, okay, I'm doing things by the book now. And I thought everything would be okay. Went to their embassy in Tbilisi, Georgia, and submitted the documentation. Well, I'm waiting, and I get contacted some days later. Okay, it's ready. And then I just walk in there, and this woman just tells me bluntly, it was denied, rejected. I'm like, what? Apparently, I mean, she wasn't like told the official reason. And this is something, like I said, one of the things that really does bother me, maybe because I'm not like Slavic, Eastern Slavic. I think sometimes Eastern Slavs just prefer being like in the, like, not like knowing what's going on, like almost like children, where they just prefer being ignorant of things. I'm not like that. I mean, I'm not a Slav. I like to know what's going on. And I think that like more transparency is often better. But like Eastern Slavs often don't think this way, and you even see this like in the war with like how Ukraine doesn't really report their casualties. Russia, both sides are basically lying about a lot of stuff, and that's just how things are in that part of the world. But um, basically, I was given the rejection, and she, of course, didn't know. They didn't tell her, but I had a pretty good idea after talking to some people that they have a thing called the Union State, and so they share immigration, military, like you name it. Some people, I think, the closest thing, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but the relationship that Belarus has now with Russia would be something comparable to, say, maybe America with Puerto Rico or America with Guam. It's kind of like almost a territory of Russia. So again, I'm not saying that in an insulting way, but that would probably be the closest way of comparing it. So because of that, it essentially made it so that they rejected my visa application. And so essentially, I can't remember, I took Latin in school. I don't remember if it's de jure or de facto. I was denied, like also basically handed down a 5-year entry ban into Belarus, into the captured territories in Ukraine, like Luhansk, Donetsk, etc., and also Abkhazia and South Ossetia and Georgia. And I would be barred from all of those territories as well. So it's a little bit of a I'm not going to lie. I mean, I feel like it's a bit of a betrayal for me because, I mean, as many of you know, while I was very critical of, say, the dating scene in Russia, some of that, though, was very localized to St. Petersburg. And if you go into other parts of Russia, it would actually be maybe a little bit more favorable, at least if you like temporarily like going out with gals and stuff. But I was I was actually very like sympathetic to Russia. I thought that, okay, this is great. There's like a stronger like European country that doesn't that actually supports more organic values, more what I thought were more traditional values. And I can't remember what the exact numbers were for the first 3 months, but it was something like only like 5,000 or I think it was like 5,000 visas were applied for or issued by US citizens. This is a large country. Russia is a country of like almost, I think, 150 million people. Imagine that. Only a few thousand visas for the first quarter of 2023. So, in other words, there's very little interest from America and the collective West in going to Russia. And I'm not saying this in a way, again, I'm not trying to sound arrogant about this, but my thought process was that okay, as someone who actually would be more sympathetic to them, as someone, as a Western person that would actually have um, a more fair outlook on their situation, I thought that they would maybe treat me a little more fairly, right? Or treat me with more, give me a second chance, right? Like if I was disregarding their law like several times, if this process had happened to me on several occasions, or if I was just some bum living in Russia, not doing anything productive for their society, I could understand, but that wasn't my case. I mean, as I said, I was in the scientific community. I thought I was being productive there. I wasn't like one of these anti-Russian libtard propagandists, which I'm sure many of you have seen. You have all these like both Russian, they're Russian or they're from Western countries. They're anti-Russian. Their channels have just catapulted, and people just give them money like there's no tomorrow. I can't believe how much money people give these people just to spew out anti-Russian propaganda. I'm not like those people. And those people will claim, like the Russians will claim that, oh, I'm exiled from Russia, but then like a month later, they're back in Russia. They're liars. I'm not like that. Like I'm obviously a foreigner. I don't have anything to gain in this fight by being sympathetic to them. And so that to me was honestly, it felt like a betrayal. And this is one of the reasons why I waited to put out a video, because if I had put out a video, say, maybe like in February or March, immediately after getting back, especially after the Belarusian visa was denied, I probably would have put out something that was a little more harsh toward Russia. But as someone that wanted to give a more fair outlook of the situation, I wanted to present things in a more objective manner. Now, as I said, my take on all of this is that, I mean, just really, I would recommend trying to follow the immigration laws in a country if at all possible. Do take into account that this isn't some game. If you break the laws, especially in a country like Russia, you could be looking at punishment, jail time. If I go back to Russia now, for instance, or they were to catch me in Russia, or if, say, I'm in one of their captured Ukrainian territories, they catch me, and I would be facing actual prison time there, like going to a criminal prison, and I would be handed down a lifetime ban from the country. So, yeah, I mean, that was basically my experience, and it was. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was quite a journey over there. So, again, I'm not here to lambast Russia or to just like go on trying to warrant a lot of sympathy from people. Just try and put my situation out there. And I do plan on continuing to publish content moving forward. I need to buy some equipment, of course, since I lost all my equipment. And I hope that like maybe that there's some interesting interesting messages that I can put out. I'm still trying to think about an angle to take because um, it's difficult right now. Like I'm a little bit at a crossroads in my life, and I'm trying to think about like what's the focus to take because as a person that does have very pro a very pro European sense, not in the sense that I'm pro like European Union or anything like that. Like I think a lot of what the European Union promotes is absolutely absurd. When I say pro European, I mean pro like white people, but not that doesn't mean I don't respect other. I actually have high respect for other ethnicities, but I mean like I think European society should be able to stand on its own. It should be respected, and I think ultimately ethnicities can collaborate. They can work together for the greater good of humanity, which of course our liberal elites don't believe. So I'm thinking about either taking that angle on things or doing more manosphere content, I guess we might say. I'm not really sure though on the manosphere content because it's like honestly for me it's very soul crushing if we might put it. It was very difficult emotionally when I was as some of you might recall when I was putting out content, especially a couple years back. It was actually very difficult on me, and I'm not that kind of person that just likes to like constantly focus on like negativity, and that's essentially what you have to do. But I will think things through, and of course, I appreciate those of you that are listening to me, and it's my hope that I can continue putting out content that is viewed. And again, if you have any questions or any comments, please leave them in the link below. That is all for today. Bye bye.